Okay, well, happy Sunday. I'm a little bit early. I was going to start 5, and we've got about 9 minutes. Uh, there's no air conditioning in here, so it's kind of warm. Uh, my original plan was I was going to follow the martial arts as they came to America and how they became fads and the legends and the myths that attached to them. Uh, I've only seen one comment on last week's uh, discussion, and he was interesting. I ended up having to block him because he's just being disingenuous. There's people who want to argue just because they want to argue. And in much of what we're going to talk about, and I warned you about this, we're going to run into people that have made a real investment in time, in money. Some of their financial futures are tied to martial art BS, and they are not going to want to let go. But, I mean, a great example, this guy earlier, not here, when I was writing years ago on the underground, I had a guy completely dismiss my point because I misspelled Don Drager's name. Only on the internet can your argument be dismissed because of a spelling error. Just stupid. He was trying to argue about the spelling of jujitsu. Go argue with Drager. Don't bother me. You really want to have fun, go get a copy of Unlocking the Secrets of Aikido-Jujitsu, and you'll really get an education. Very strange. But what I thought I would do today, because of some things that hit me, was I was going to kind of take a little side turn. First, let me talk about the most egregious myth involving those things we call martial arts. The very name doesn't make any sense. The term martial art means skills that are used in war. There has never been a war fought with martial arts. And yeah, you're going to hear all sorts of people try to twist that. But until you can show me the battle where the army of the karate guys stormed the hill and took or fought the hill that was being held by the Aikido guys, that's not a martial art. We're right here on YouTube, guys. Look up the word samurai and see some of the things that are there. This guy was trying to say, who had a problem with me, that, the samurai didn't always wear armor. And this, so the jujitsu was when he didn't have his armor on. Well, which is it? Because I see all of these definitions. The taking the sword away. He had to give me that one. Because I was all set to say, come on down to Ann Arbor. There's a kendo school, and I want to watch somebody knock the crap out of you with a shinai. And we're going to go further with that when we get to Okinawan martial arts and the myth around all of that stuff. But because the term used in war keeps coming up, and one of the points this guy made was there's military combat manuals that teach sword disarms against a saber. I guess I have to tell you something that most people don't know, and it's pretty rough to have to accept. So let me start here. If you have not had higher education, that is not your fault. If you remain ignorant, that is your fault. So I'm going to give you reading assignments. And this is a big one. The name of the book, is called On Killing. It is written by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. It's been out there for a while. I will never forget, and Google is your friend. Look up Mark Scott here in the Detroit area. You'll learn everything you need to know. We became very dear friends. He was the best man at my wedding. Going to talk about him again in a minute. But I gave him a copy of that book, and he couldn't put it down. He was talking about it on his show all the time. I will give you the high points, plural. First, Colonel Grossman makes the postulation that it is a very, very difficult thing to get a person to look somebody in the eye and take their life. I understand that. If you don't know, God bless you. I hope you never have to find out. But it's a hell of a thing to look at a man and take everything away from him. His hopes, his dreams, everything he wants to be, everything he's going to be, and you're going to take that all away when you take his life. Well, Colonel Grossman said that for a long time, we didn't train people how to do that very well. Now, as you can see, I'm cleaning. I'm actively trying to move. But so I haven't had a chance to look at the book. Most of my books I've been transferring over to Kindle or books on tape, so I don't have the hard copies to deal with. So I'm not sure if he goes back any more than the Civil War. But I vividly remember the Civil War statistics. And what he points out is when they would have those charges, you would see at Gettysburg or whatever, soldiers would simply fall down and lay face down and not move and wait for the battle to be over. Not so much because they were afraid to get shot. They didn't want to shoot somebody else. And as we went into subsequent wars, we got better at teaching our young men how to kill. And it's interesting to point out, and it's another of his theories, that when we got to Vietnam, we had the system down pretty good. And our young men did not have a problem looking somebody in the eye and taking their life. But isn't it interesting that that's when our major problems with PTSD showed up? That's not where I'm going today, but it is something interesting to think about. Well, because of that, one of the side notes in Colonel Grossman's book was that one of the most awful things that could happen on the battlefield would be if the guys in front of you broke and turned around and ran back because their own men did not want to shoot on their own people. And if they turned around and retreated, the enemy could get that much closer because nobody was shooting anymore. Why is that important? Well, first, I never knew William Fairbairn, way before my time. But I did meet Colonel Rex Applegate a couple of times at gun shows. And we had a couple of conversations over a hot dog or whatever kind of food they had at those places. It was kind of like carnival food. Well, I asked about that, and this is what he told me. First, the idea of being unarmed in any way, shape, or form and taking out somebody who's armed is a ridiculous assumption. It cannot be done. Sidebar, I think you can watch the video here on YouTube. It is called Surviving edged weapons. 30 years ago, that was the classic police video. That is where we have now that was postulated back then, and it's accepted fact now that you have to have 21 feet to draw and shoot somebody who's charging at you with a knife, or you're going to get it stuck in your chest. But Applegate's point was this: in the entire video, there isn't a single unarmed knife disarm caught. And Colonel Applegate, who, if you remember, changed the design of the Fairbairn Stykes fighting knife into the Applegate Fairbairn fighting knife, Applegate said you don't see it because none of them work. If the guy knows what he's doing, you're dead. Keep that in mind. Then what the heck is this unarmed stuff all about? Simple. If your weapon runs out of ammo, or it breaks, or whatever, and you turn around to run back because you've lost your weapons, you've started a rout, you've started a retreat, and your men are going to stop shooting. But if we spend some time in basic training teaching you bullshit that you think is going to work, you'll stay up there and try it and get killed like a good American, but you won't run back and mess up the battle. That's what it's all about, guys. Back then. Today it's a little different. We're going to talk about that in a second. But I'm sorry. The sword stuff, come on, guys. Use your head. Yeah. Let's remember in World War II, one of our opponents was the Japanese. And everybody knew that Japanese officers, and sometimes the NCOs, were carrying samurai swords. However, we probably didn't have a lot of katana where they were shooting these military manuals, so they used the saber. But the idea of facing off against a sword is simply to give the soldier a feeling of confidence when he's up against something that's going to kill him because he has no shot. The other day, again, somebody here on YouTube, and it was Oriental because I don't know whether it was Chinese or Japanese writing or what, but a guy would do a knife defense, and then these couple of Asian guys would show why it was stupid. So look for that stuff. It's sitting right there. But that's the reason about why we did it in World War II. However, the terms martial arts, it was used in war, and World War II has given us a ton of martial art bullshit that people are using to make money and promote themselves. And I'll get to the big one. I just saw it on Facebook when I was coming here. But for instance, right here on YouTube, there's half a dozen people with Facebook programs just like mine. And they're all teaching Fairbairn unarmed combatives. Well, Paladin Press is out of business. The Canadian government with its lawsuits and the US with its lawsuits put them out of business. But there's a really good book out there, but good luck finding it. It's called The Close Combat Files of Colonel Rex Applegate. And the two things in there that are spectacular is you get to see what we call the BS board. Now, if you're running a martial arts school that has families, that BS means big story, because you don't want the kids asking what BS means, and mom and dad get upset if you tell them. But what they did at the Funhouse, and I did it in mine, and Chris Herzog did it in his dojo, you cut out all of those ridiculous ads and you put them on the bulletin board. I had one up there that said, hit a man fort. Was it 14? Was it 11? It was some ridiculous number of times in 1 second. Study Street Kempo. Oh, please. And we just had all of these things. And all you got to do if you want to see the classic ones, and we'll be talking about them next week, again, Google is your friend. Type in Jiu-Jitsu ads, 1930, and then do it again, 1940, and they'll come up. And you can see how they advertised these things. Well, the other thing, and I wish I could quote it from memory. I can't anymore. But essentially, it was kind of like a plaque thing that said, unarmed combat is what a soldier enters into when his weapons have failed or he's been so foolish he didn't bring a weapon with him in the first place. Doesn't sound like there's a lot of confidence with that. And let me ultimately tell you why. All of this nonsense about unarmed combat, if it was true, tell me the unarmed combat war. Even cave people would pick up large sticks and hit you in the head. They weren't using unarmed techniques. Okay, let's be plain. My house defensive firearm is a Sig Sauer P220 45 caliber semi-automatic handgun. In it are 230 grain. They used to call, HydroShocks. Now, this is what's important. Praise God, I've never had to do it yet, and I'm hoping I never have to. But we'll just go to the range. I pick that SIG up, and I point at the target, and I pull the trigger. And essentially, I haven't looked up the ballistics in a while, but that 230 grain bullet is going to leave that barrel at around 900 plus feet per second. It's going to have about 800 foot-pounds at the barrel. And when it hits somebody, it's going to hit, depending on how far it goes and how long the barrel is, but it's going to hit around 600 to 800 foot-pounds when it smacks you. Here's the point. Doesn't matter if 135-pound Bruce Lee or 5'0" Kristen Chenoweth or big fat me, doesn't matter who pulls that trigger. That is still going to be a 230 grain bullet. It's still going to leave around 1,000 feet per second. It's still going to hit between 600 and 800 foot-pounds. It's not going to change. You can't say the same thing about unarmed combat. Trying to get 5'0" Kristen Chenoweth to hit you hard enough to end a fight is insane. I'm not going to say anything about Bruce Lee because we're going to talk about him later, and I'm going to tick off all sorts of people. Now, what's important about that, guys, when you hear the bull crap, and right now, the biggest bull crapper out there are the Krav Maga guys. I am not going to get in it real deep, but I have heard them say, Krav Maga is so important to the Israeli army. They train in it for an entire year. To which I say, no modern military is going to waste an entire year of training time on unarmed combat. It is not done. I'm not saying they don't train in it. Yes, they do. I'm not saying that once they finish basic and advanced training, when they get assigned to a unit, there's probably some things they do there on a regular basis. But the idea that you're spending hours a day for a year on unarmed martial arts? I don't know of any military that does that. I'm aware that the United States military has a Gracie Jiu Jitsu based program that came out of the Ranger School, but it's not as big as you think it is. And frankly, I want to see somebody put on a web belt with a canteen and then roll around on the ground. Because when that thing knocks your kidney out your rear end, I think you're going to see that's a bad idea. I know the Marine Corps has a whole thing now with belts and everything. But again, you only get so much of it in basic. You get a little bit more in advanced. And once you get to the unit, that's just something they do ongoing. But let me give you the biggest one. And I just saw it again on Facebook. They are selling the program. And it's just like every other bullcrap martial art ad you've ever seen. This one, it's going to teach you the highly effective and secret techniques of SEAL Team 6. You're going to learn the deadly combat tactics of the Navy SEAL. I won't keep going. And yeah, it's Paul Vunak's thing. He's been talking about that for years. He's made all sorts of claims for years. Not going to confront him. If you want to believe it, go ahead. But let me counterpunch it. Remember earlier we talked about Mark Scott? Well, again, Google is your friend. I want you to look up Richard Marcinko. Wrote a book called Rogue Warrior. Richard Marcinko created SEAL Team 6. Christine wants some attention. This is my girlfriend, Christine. Love you, sweetie. She knows Cat Roddy. Yes. When she wants attention, she wants attention. Okay. Richard Marcinko created SEAL Team 6. I suggest on your book reviews, read Rogue Warrior sometime. Read what he did. Well, he was in town on a book signing or some sort of thing, and Mark Scott had him on the program. And then Mark Scott took him out to lunch. And Mark invited me to come along. So we all went to lunch, and I got to meet Richard Marcinko. And I really had a question I was dying to ask him. And no, it wasn't about unarmed martial arts. I would have gotten there, but the question that was answered the unarmed one, without even asking. We were eating, everything was fine. And I said, Mr. Marcinko, I'd like to ask you about what kind of a knife SEALs carry. And he chuckled a little bit. And the first words out of his mouth were, you don't think we carry fighting knives, do you? And I said, no, but I want to have the definitive answer. And he said, okay, to a Navy SEAL, a knife is a tool, something to cut wire or to, I can't even think anymore when you get those twigs and you got to whittle them down and stuff, all of that kind of stuff. Cut deck cord. He said 90% it's a tool. 10% of the time, maybe it might be pressed into doing combative tasks. Now, do you think I was going to bother asking him about unarmed tactics? Everybody who tells you Navy SEALs train in unarmed combat is full of monkey poop. Absolutely full of monkey poop. Marcinko himself in Rogue Warrior says, SEALs shoot people. We train to shoot people. And as I recall, notice whenever I'm not sure, I tell you that. But I think he said in the book that one of the things that got him in trouble was he, SEAL Team 6, They were shooting as much ammo as the entire Marine Corps. And that kind of upset Navy people. Yes, sweetie. So now here's Paul Vunak saying he's created some Navy SEAL hand-to-hand combat system. Well, first, Navy SEALs do not train in unarmed hand-to-hand combat. But, and this is where the claim comes from, once these special op people have gone through the training and they're assigned to a unit, in many cases, they have money they can spend on ancillary training. I know for a fact a special forces group paid Dan Severn to come in and teach a seminar after he won UFC 5. Are we to believe that Dan Severn is somehow a military genius for unarmed combat, for Green Berets? Don't be ridiculous. They simply wanted to hang out with Dan Severn, and they had the money. I have no doubt Paul Vunak taught stuff in a clinic situation or a seminar situation to a whole bunch of Navy SEALs. But that is not a naval certified program. It's just something that they did. But they will continue to sell that to you. And that is nuts. But why the push? Let me help you. Let's go back to the SIG P220. These programs know they've got to get around that reality. So they have to claim they have techniques that overcome the size and strength difference. Now, most of us that firmly believe in combat sport and have a realistic attitude about what combat is in the real world, we go, wait a second. If there was a way around size and strength, you wouldn't need weight classes in combat sports like judo. And as I told you last week, get judo training methods. Read what they say. When they make a point that there has never been an all Japan champion who weighed less than 170 pounds, that's a big statement. But what they'll say is, oh, that's a sport. That has rules. That has a referee. A real fight has no rules. And what that's all about, and we're going to get into it big time when we talk about Bruce Lee, that is the myth of the unbeatable eye jab. Oh, I'm just going to poke you in the eye and the whole fight is over. I can't think of the guy from Seinfeld, but he was on Letterman one time years ago, and he was studying Jeet Kune Do, and he was working out with a guy who was a legitimate judo guy, and the guy grabbed him and jerked him up, and this guy said, well, yeah, I just hit you in the eye. Fight's all over. And I'm thinking, if that guy wasn't nice to you, buddy, you'd be eating dirt. But when I try to explain these things to you, it's amazing. Christine, come on now. People go nuts. Earlier this week, I was telling somebody about throwing somebody face up in a real combat situation is a horribly bad idea in Japan, and it's fatal over here. Japan is a knife culture. Throw somebody face up, they can get their knife. America is a gun culture. Throw somebody face up, you're going to get shot. Well, this guy immediately said, well, I do mixed martial arts. You throw me face down, I just pop right back up. And I'm thinking, do you even know how I'm talking about taking you down? Oh, you can't just hunt out there for some throw. He just didn't want to believe it, and he wasn't going to open his mind. I got driven off of Quora. This is the best story to tell you. These traditional martial artists, guys, don't wake them up. They sure get mad. Well, first off, they have no sense of humor. I told a joke on Quora that I told years ago at the Spirit of the Eagle judo camp. I'm sitting there with Chris Herzog and all our guys, and they're talking about all the different things you can do there that week. And one of the things they said was, oh, and we have a Tai Chi teacher here now. You can do Tai Chi. And without missing a beat, I turned to Chris and I said, hey, that could really come in handy if we get attacked underwater by a mime. I think that's hysterical. Sitting behind us was the Tai Chi teacher. He had no sense of humor. Well, that's because you're ignorant. You don't understand Tai Chi. And I kept trying to say, you need to calm down. You need to eat a bran muffin. I'm just kidding. And he really pushed it. And I finally turned around and said, hey, I was just making a joke. I'm sorry you can't take it. But if you're looking to prove something, I'll be here all week and I'll be on the mat. You feel free to come on over and kick my ass with your Tai Chi. I told the joke, not the whole story, on Quora, and a couple more Tai Chi people go nuts. They're actually trying to say you can use Tai Chi in MMA. Well, the big thing we got into, there was an argument there about how do you defeat a gang when you're unarmed. And all of these traditional martial artists were spouting solutions. And after I just couldn't stand it anymore, I came in and said, guys, I have no idea why you're arguing this. There is absolutely no possible way an unarmed person can take on two people, let alone 3, 4, or more, and come out on top. It can't be done unless you're fantasizing. Oh, did they let me have it? And one guy in particular really hung in there. And I just finally said, well, guys, if you're that positive you can pull it off, let me know when and where. Come on down to the school. Pick out 2, 3 guys. And if you can kick their ass, I'll give you money. And of course, nobody wanted to do that. And this other guy kept pushing. And then he said, well, I understand why you're upset. You don't know how to do it. I'm sorry, your martial arts doesn't teach you how to defeat multiple opponents. We train in that. And I finally had to say, are you awake when you do this training? Because there's no way in hell, none. And he spouted it again. And I said, hey, come on down. Pick your team. You're going to get your ass kicked. And then, of course, he went nuts. That's what's wrong with you mixed martial art people. You have no respect. It's not about respect, Skippy. You have made an outrageous claim. It is not up to me to disprove your claim. It's up to you to prove it. But all of you listening to my voice here on YouTube, let me give you a little project. And then I'll tell you what they're going to say when you show them this. In Europe, they've got a real interesting version of mixed martial arts. They've got the octagon cage, but instead of 2 fighters, there's 2 teams of 5 fighters. There's 10 people in the cage. You got a blue team, you got a red team. And yes, there's a referee in there to say, okay, this guy's done. But they blow the whistle or ring the bell or do whatever they do, and the 2 teams converge. Now, there are a ton of matches you can watch. And every single match will end exactly the same way. It never changes. I don't know why anybody finds this interesting to watch. But here is exactly what happens. You got 5 people here, you got 5 people here, and they come together. And before very long, one of these 2 teams is going to take somebody out on the other team. And now you're 5-4. And immediately, one of these guys is in a 2-on-1 situation. And in moments, he's out of the game because the 2 guys beat his brains out. And now, somewhere in here, you've got a 3-on-1 situation. I won't keep going. You should be able to reason it out. And anybody who said, now, this is what they're going to tell you. Well, that's still sport. There are still rules. You have a referee. The way you take out a gang is you have to use deadly, illegal techniques. Show me. Again, it's the myth of, oh, I poke you in the eye. You're on the ground dying. Eye pokes are wonderful. They get the job done. They're a very effective technique. And if you think I'm relying on one against a gang, you are out of your tree. If I had to face a gang, my concealed pistol license is what's going to keep me alive. All you have to do, let's look at some of those videos where those so-called peaceful protests are pulling people out of cars. You think martial arts is going to get you out of that? You are delusional. Some books to find and read. Unfortunately, they're out of print. First off, if you want to know straight up all of the techniques that are in traditional Kodokan Judo, get Sid Hoare's book, The A to Z of Judo. It was originally made by Ippon Books. I don't think Ippon Books is around anymore. But I mean leg locks, chokes, arm locks, wrist locks, pins, throws, all sorts of stuff in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is sitting right here in the book. Second, if you are one of those people who are into traditional karate and you believe that there are things in the kata where the hidden techniques are, and when you study that, you can destroy an enemy and all that kind of nonsense, excuse me, again, out of print. The book is called Zen Shaolin Karate. It was put out by the Tuttle Company, and I don't even know if they're around anymore. But let me tell you, this is a fascinating story. This guy studied karate. I think it was a Japanese style, and he was learning kata, and he wanted to know about the meanings in the kata, and nobody could give him a straight answer. So he went to Okinawa, tracing the lineage of his karate style, and he started training in the katas in Okinawa, and they were a little different, and he tried to get his answers and still didn't get it. So he traced that back to China and went to China. And so after all of that research, what he's uncovered and what he found and found is fascinating reading. And that's what you need to read this week. I am more than willing to answer any honest question. If you are just here because you're pissed off because I said VUNAC did a seminar for Navy SEALs, it was not a Navy certified program. Well, if the truth bothers you, I'm sorry. If you want to get upset because you're training in Krav Maga and you want to believe, and go ahead, but I'm not going to argue that. I've been down that road. But next week, we are going to go back to judo. We're going to go back to how it became a big fad and why it died out. We're going to talk about the things necessary to have a successful martial art fad in America and what kills it dead every single time. Thank you guys. I hope you have fun. Down there below, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumb up for like, because I sure need it. Because, like I said, I'm hoping for this to become my retirement. God bless you, and I'll see you next week.